Have you ever, I don't know, thought about that whole Antichrist thing, like who they're supposed to be and where they'll show up?
Yeah, definitely. It's a question that's fascinated people for centuries.
Totally. And if you're into that kind of stuff, buckle up, because we're diving deep into some sources that suggest a pretty wild answer, one that, honestly, a lot of folks might not see coming.
Right, we're talking interpretations of biblical prophecy here, specifically from the books of Daniel and Revelation.
And what makes this even more interesting is that it goes beyond just the Bible.
Oh yeah, we're talking ancient clay tablets, hidden numerical patterns, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so getting to the heart of it, what we're exploring is this idea that a specific event in history is directly connected to the rise of a future world leader.
And to the emergence of this end-time Babylon.
Exactly, end-time Babylon. So understanding this connection, at least according to our sources, is like a huge clue to figuring out where this Antichrist figure comes from.
And maybe even who they are.
Now, before we go any further, we should probably talk about what Antichrist even means, because it can be a little confusing.
Absolutely. The sources we're looking at make it clear that Antichrist can have two meanings. It can mean against Christ.
Right.
But it can also mean in place of Christ, like a substitute.
That's interesting. So not just opposing Jesus, but actually trying to replace him.
Exactly. And the book of Revelation, it actually talks about two main figures, right? The beast and then the false prophet.
Right. So which one is the Antichrist?
Well, the interpretation we're looking at suggests that both of them actually fit the description.
Really?
Yeah, they both work against Jesus Christ in their own way.
So when most people think about the Antichrist, they're usually picturing that main global ruler, right? The beast who tries to take Christ's place on the world stage. Okay, that's the figure we'll be focusing on today.
That's the one.
Okay, so to kick things off, let's go all the way back to the book of Daniel, chapter 4.
Daniel chapter 4, King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Super famous story.
Right. I remember learning about this in Sunday school. So Nebuchadnezzar, he's the king of Babylon.
Ancient Babylon. Powerful empire.
And he has this crazy dream, right? What was it, a giant tree?
Yeah, this massive tree providing for all these animals, birds in its branches, all kinds of creatures finding food and shade under it. It's this symbol of abundance and prosperity.
But then the dream takes a dark turn, right?
Right. Suddenly this mighty tree is chopped down, and then they put this band made of iron and bronze around its stump.
And this band, it stays there for a specific time, right? 7 times.
7 times, yeah.
Now, in the original context of the dream, the interpretation was pretty straightforward, wasn't it?
Right. Daniel, he interprets the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, and he says the tree represents the king himself.
Oh, I see. So the chopping down of the tree
symbolized Nebuchadnezzar losing his sanity.
Really? Like going crazy?
Yeah, literally. The text says he lived like a wild animal for 7 times, but then after that period, he regains his sanity and his kingdom is restored.
And that's exactly what happened, right?
According to the biblical account, yes.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This source material suggests there's another layer to this prophecy.
That's right. This is where the concept of dual fulfillment comes in.
Dual fulfillment?
Yeah, the idea is that sometimes an event in the past can have its own meaning in the moment.
Right.
But then also act as a kind of foreshadowing of a bigger event in the future.
Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar going crazy and then being restored, that was the immediate fulfillment.
Exactly. But the source material proposes there's this second, much larger fulfillment of the prophecy.
And in the second fulfillment, the tree.
It represents, potentially, the kingdom of Babylon itself.
So not just the king, but the whole empire.
Yeah, and the idea is that Babylon would be without a ruler, like without a real dominant power for those same 7 times mentioned in the dream.
So how do we figure out how long these 7 times are? Because 7 times, that could mean anything, right?
Right, it's pretty vague, but the source material tries to pin down a specific duration. It looks to the book of Revelation.
Revelation, okay.
Specifically, Revelation 12:1. That verse talks about a time period described as a time, times, and half a time.
A time, times, and half a time. That sounds equally vague.
It does sound vague, but if you break it down, 1 time plus 2 times plus half a time, you get 3.5 times.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Revelation 11:3 also mentions this same period of 3.5 times, but this time it equates it to 1,260 days.
Okay, so 3.5 times equals 1,260 days. I see where this is going.
Right, so if we double that to get to the full 7 times mentioned in Daniel's prophecy, we're looking at 2,520 days.
2,520 days, got it.
But then the text introduces another principle that you see in some interpretations of biblical prophecy, the idea of a day for a year.
A day for a year, so each day in the prophecy represents an actual year.
Exactly. And they cite the book of Ezekiel as an example. In Ezekiel chapter 4, the prophet's actions over a certain number of days symbolized a corresponding number of years for the nation of Israel. So if we apply this day for a year principle to those 2,520 days,
we get 2,520 years.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a really long time.
It is.
So according to this interpretation, Babylon would be without a dominant ruler for 2,520 years.
And then after that, a new power would emerge, connected somehow to that ancient Babylonian root.
And this new power, this is what eventually leads to, well, the beast.
The Antichrist, yeah.
Okay, so if we're trying to figure out when this whole end-time Babylon thing kicks off, we need to know exactly when ancient Babylon fell, right?
Precisely. We need a starting point for that 2,520-year countdown.
And the source material takes us right to that moment. Daniel chapter 5, the story of the handwriting on the wall.
Oh, yeah, super famous story. You've got the Babylonian king Belshazzar. He's having this big feast.
Yes, totally decadent, lots of gold goblets and stuff.
Totally. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this hand appears and writes a message on the wall.
Spooky.
Right. The king and all his guests, they're terrified. Nobody can figure out what it means.
Except Daniel.
Right. They call in Daniel, and he interprets the message. Mene tekel parsin.
And those words mean?
Daniel says it means that Babylon's time is up. The kingdom is finished. It's going to be handed over to the Medes and Persians.
Okay, so pretty bad news for Belshazzar and his party guests.
You could say that.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The source material points out that those words, they also have a hidden numerical meaning.
That's right. Men, it was a unit of currency, a mina, equal to 50 shekels. Tekel meant 1 shekel, and parsin, the plural, referred to half a mina, 25 shekels.
Oh, I see. So you can add up those values.
Exactly. 2 mene at 50 each, plus 1 tekel at 1, plus 1 parsin at 25. That gives you a total of 126 shekels.
126, that number sounds familiar.
It should. Remember those 1,260 days from Revelation?
Oh, wow, you're right.
But the source material takes it a step further. It says the shekel wasn't the smallest unit of currency. There was the gara.
The gar.
And there were 20 garas in 1 shekel. So if you multiply those 126 shekels by 20,
you get 2520. Wow, there it is again. That same number, 2520.
Appearing in 2 seemingly unrelated parts of the story.
Okay, so while this whole handwriting incident is going down, the Medes and Persians are actually outside the city, right? About to take over.
That's right. They're already in the process of conquering Babylon.
And the source material brings in an historical record to pinpoint the exact date of this event.
The Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle, it's an ancient clay tablet like we talked about earlier. It actually records historical events in Babylon.
Like a Babylonian history book?
Pretty much. And it says that Sapar was captured without a battle on the 14th day.
Sapar!
That's the Babylonian name for the month that corresponds to the Hebrew month of Tishri.
Okay, so the 14th day of Tishri, what year was this?
539 BC. And the Chronicle goes on to mention that Nabonidus, who was the last king of Babylon, he fled 2 days later. And then Cyrus's army entered the city without any resistance.
So Babylon officially fell on the 14th of Tishri, 539 BC.
That's the date the source material uses as the starting point for our 2520-year countdown.
Okay, so 539 BC plus 2,520 years.
That brings us to...
roll, please.
The 14th of Tishri, 1982, which on our modern calendar is October 1st, 1982.
October 1st, 1982. And why is that date so important?
Well, this is where the source material drops a bit of a bombshell.
Let's hear it.
On that very same day, October 1st, 1982, Helmut Kohl became Chancellor of West Germany.
Helmut Kohl, the guy who later reunified Germany.
The very same. And what's interesting is that he didn't come to power through a regular election. It was through a vote of no confidence in the German parliament.
Like the other politicians basically kicked out the old chancellor and put Kohl in his place.
Exactly. And the source material highlights this as the only time that's ever happened in the history of the German Federal Republic.
Wow, that's wild. So Kohl comes to power on the exact date predicted by this 2,520-year prophecy.
According to this interpretation, yes.
Okay, so does that mean Helmut Kohl is the Antichrist?
No, the source material is very clear about that. Kohl retired from politics in 2002 and died in 2017.
Okay, so he can't be the Antichrist. Right, but then what's the point of him coming to power on that specific date?
The interpretation offered is that Cole's rise to power on October 1st, 1982, is like a signpost.
A signpost pointing to.
The origin and location of this end-time Babylon,
Yep.
Germany, and by extension, the European Union.
So the Antichrist, the beast, they're going to come from Europe.
That's the idea.
Interesting. Okay, so the source material lays out this whole prophecy, this timeline, and then boom, Helmut Kohl enters the scene right on schedule.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? It goes on to present a bunch of other evidence to connect Kohl to this whole end-time Babylon idea.
It does. It lays out 3 key facts. Fact number 1, exactly 8 years after Kohl came to power, Germany was reunified.
East and West Germany, back together as one country.
Yep, and it happened on October 3rd, 1990, which, get this, also corresponded to the 14th of Tishri on the Hebrew calendar.
Wow, so both Kohl's rise to power and the reunification of Germany happened on the 14th of Tishri.
Exactly. And the source material reminds us why Germany was divided in the first place. After World War I, after World War II, the Allies were like, okay, we need to keep Germany in check. We can't let them become too powerful again.
Right, because a powerful Germany could destabilize all of Europe.
Exactly. So the fact that Germany reunified,
Right,
and it happened under Kohl, and it happened on this significant date on the Hebrew calendar, the source material presents this as a really big deal.
like a huge piece of this prophetic puzzle falling into place.
Right. And then there's fact number 2. Helmut Kohl was a huge advocate for European unification.
He was like the driving force behind the European Union.
He was one of the main architects of the treaty that established the EU, introduced the euro, and opened the door for Eastern European countries to join.
And the source material connects this directly to the prophecy in Daniel 4, the one about a new tree growing from the stump of the old Babylonian Empire.
Exactly. The argument is that modern Europe, its cultural and political roots, they go all the way back to the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and ultimately to Babylon.
So Europe is like the new Babylon.
That's the interpretation being presented.
Wow, and the source material even points to the image on some 2-euro coins. The one with the woman riding the beast. They say that's a visual representation of this end-time Babylon from the book of Revelation.
With the woman symbolizing Europe.
It's a pretty specific interpretation.
It is.
Okay, so that's fact number 2. What's the third fact?
Fact number 3 is that, well, under Kohl and his successors, Germany has become the leading power in Europe.
Economically and politically.
Yeah, they're really the driving force behind Europe's growing influence on the world stage.
So the source material lays out all this evidence and then asks a pretty pointed question. What are the chances that all of this Kohl's rise to power on this specific date, the reunification of Germany 8 years later, on the same Hebrew calendar date, his role in uniting Europe, what are the chances all of this would happen if there wasn't some kind of deeper meaning behind it?
Like some kind of prophetic significance.
Right. It definitely makes you think.
It does.
Okay, so wrapping things up, let's do a quick recap.
Sure.
So we started with this prophecy in Daniel 4 about the tree being cut down.
And the band of iron and bronze around the stump for 7 times.
And then we looked at the handwriting on the wall in Daniel 5.
Which pinpointed the fall of Babylon to the 14th of Tishri, 539 BC.
And then we did the math, added 2,520 years to that date.
And landed on October 1st, 1982, the day Helmut Kohl became Chancellor of West Germany.
And then we talked about the reunification of Germany, Kohl's role in uniting Europe, and Germany's rise to power.
And all of this, according to the source material, points to the emergence of an end-time Babylon in Europe.
From which the Antichrist, the beast, will eventually arise.
That's the interpretation.
Wow. It's a lot to take in. And the source material makes it clear that it's not saying Helmut Kohl was the Antichrist.
Definitely not.
But rather that his appearance on the world stage at that specific time, it's like a clue, a marker, pointing to the origin of this future global power.
And to the potential origin of the Antichrist.
And the source material also reminds us that the Bible talks about a lot of false prophets who will appear in the end times.
Including a powerful religious leader who will work alongside the beast.
So we really need to be careful, do our own research, not just blindly accept anything we hear.
Absolutely.
So what's the takeaway here? What should we be thinking about after this deep dive?
I think the big question is, what does all of this mean for the future? If this interpretation is correct and this end-time Babylon is emerging in Europe, what are the implications for the rest of the world? What will happen to places like North America, South America, Africa, Asia, the Middle East?
Right. And what about countries like the United States, Israel, Russia, India? What roles will they play in all of this?
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the big question, who is this beast, this Antichrist figure? Will they be someone we already know, or someone who will rise to prominence in the coming years?
So many questions, so few answers.
That's the nature of prophecy, I suppose. It gives us glimpses of the future, but leaves a lot open to interpretation.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there for today.
That sounds good.
But we want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Do you find this interpretation of biblical prophecy convincing? Does it change how you view current events?
Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.